A week ago, Cheryl Cole launched her new album, Messy Little Raindrops, which went into the chart and was #1 last week. And in the entire UK market, it sold 100,000 units in a week, which on a generous, probably about £10 per copy, says it was £1 million market, got her to #1. And by the way, that's an awful lot less than it used to take to get to #1 most times of the year. Last year, one album got to #1 with as little as 30,000 unit sales across physical and digital. Yesterday, Call of Duty was launched in the UK. We're open at midnight anyway, most of our stores now, but many people opened at midnight. In 24 hours, my estimate, based on what Tesco did and what I think our market share was, I think 1 million units were sold in 24 hours at an average retail of £40. So in one day, a new release on a game took £40 million, and an entire week, a music title took 1 million. So part of the message is be very careful what you wish for, and we need to think very carefully about what happens when we let the genie out of the bottle. So, and by the way, you know, as a sort of segue to all of this, is I think there is room in this market for all of the things that we've talked about already this morning. VOD, subscription, sell-through. I think the watch out is to make sure that as individuals strive to make their bit of it as big as possible, that we don't miss out steps and that we do take the consumer with us. Because I think I guess the music industry is perhaps a lesson in what happens when you get on and do the things you can do and not think through how that plays out for the consumer. So this first bit for me is really saying, look, Tesco's got a lot of stores. I mean, I assume most people in the room are aware of Tesco. We're the 3rd largest retailer in the world now, 2nd by profit. We're in 14 countries. We have a lot of valuable retail assets called shops. We've got over 2,000 of them in the UK and another 3,000 worldwide. And in the UK, we have roughly 20 million shoppers a week coming through our doors. And the one thing that keeps me awake at night is the extent to which our business is based around impulse and how largely our business is based on some quite illogical behaviours. So if people were entirely logical in their behaviour, libraries would be a lot busier and video rental would be a much more lucrative business. Because actually owning movies and books, and to some degree music, is a rather illogical thing to do, particularly given that your consumption of that book or movie is likely to be once at best, and that you're likely to keep those things and cherish them for a lifetime. I've moved 7 times in the last 6 years, and I've taken huge boxes of books with me, which I never read, that I put on bookshelves in each new location, because they're part of who I am, they're part of my, I've collected them. So the behaviours that I've displayed in buying those books or buying those movies aren't actually based on consumption. And I think there's a big watch out there, particularly around things like VOD, where I'm rather worried there isn't enough D in the VOD. So these are some of the stores we've got in Europe. We're largely in Eastern Europe. There's a sort of historical legacy to that, which I won't bore you with. We're very much now in Asia, and more recently we've expanded into India and other Asian markets. So a fairly rapidly growing business. Tesco has about a 15% share of the entertainment sell-through business. It's slightly different across music, games and DVD. I anticipate that market share will grow probably to around 20 in the not too distant future. Actually, on a title-by-title basis, it's much larger than that. It's driven by the fact that we don't have a huge business online today, and there's a bit of some interest in there around what's happened with big box retailers. But typically, we'll often get 30, 40% market shares on the major releases. So a big player in the physical sell-through. It's very, very clear that entertainment provides a very interesting role and has done, whether you talk about Tesco, Walmart, any big box retailer will tell you that entertainment drives traffic into the stores. And interestingly, even when you take out the value of the entertainment product, the baskets that people have that have entertainment products in them are larger. Why that is entirely, we don't know. We also know that if you look at people's habits of buying things other than food in a grocery environment, it seems that more often than not, the first thing they buy on their journey into non-food product is entertainment. So it's very clear and powerful that it does all of those things. The downside is there's not a lot of money in it. It's fairly low margin. Traditional retailers have done a largely poor job of transitioning their business, even on physical to online. So if you look at what Tesco's done or the other big box retailers, you could scratch your head and wonder why it is that they've not done a very good job of even moving physical sales from stores to online, and have largely allowed the big online players, Amazon and Play, to pretty much do that unopposed on both sides of the Atlantic. And the truth is that there isn't a lot of money in it online. In fact, there's even less money in it online than there was in stores. And big box retailers don't see the same level of basket and traffic driving behaviour that they would have seen in the stores. So the logical conclusion is, why go and build a great big business that doesn't make any money when it doesn't really have any other necessarily ancillary benefits? We actually relaunched our entire entertainment online business for entertainment a year ago now, and it does what it's supposed to do. You can buy DVDs, you can download music, but I think it's fair to say that our performance is rather modest, and we certainly haven't been disruptive enough to really challenge Amazon and Play in the way that you'd perhaps expect a retailer like Tesco to do, nor have we really made any dent into, say, what Apple are doing digitally. Now, I think we could do those things, but the cost of doing that are so prohibitive. Actually, again, it makes you wonder why you would do that. So I think there's some interesting strategic decisions for the big boxes to think about as they move into this world. There's no doubt that unchecked, the existing store business will erode, and it will move online and it will move to digital. I think that some of that is rather self-fulfilling. And the question you'd have to ask for a business like Tesco, where this is less than 1% of our turnover, does it really matter? Why does it matter to us at all? Well, clearly I think it does matter, and here's why I think it does. Entertainment consumption is the overwhelming activity in places like the living room and also on mobile devices. I think retailers recognise that these places are going to become increasingly important locations for more general retailing. They already are. People are going to be doing a lot more things other than watching television and listening to music in these places. So it's much broader than simply entertainment. I think online environments that have entertainment as part of their core are much likely to be switched on more of the time. And that's important for a retailer where a customer has pretty much got their shopping basket open all the time and are tipping product into it, whatever it may be, little and often. We think that that's quite an interesting dynamic. It's also true that the worlds of the internet, broadcasting, advertising, product placement are all collapsing and merging into each other, where people will be watching television and then responding to it much more rapidly than they did before. So I use the example of my 13-year-old son who sits and watches, I don't know, a program like Top Gear, where he's got a laptop open on his knee, he's watching the program, he's got the Lamborghini website up, he's talking to his friends on Facebook, allegedly doing his homework, all at the same time. Actually, we're seeing that experience collapse to a point where he will be able to respond to what he sees on the screen, find out things about the things he's seeing, and then potentially respond to them. Not in buying a Murcielago, but he might buy the ingredients on a cook show, or he may buy a piece of clothing that he sees somebody wearing, because actually the capability of us to deliver that experience in a more collapsed way is going to be quite interesting. So I think that's why this is more interesting to big box retailers than perhaps the lack of profitability and the move to online might suggest. And of course, our existing and emerging competitors are using entertainment to acquire customers and build relationships across an ever range of growing services. So we do see it's not just about one supermarket against another or two big box retailers going head to head. Actually, there are new competitors emerging that are broadening their reach into other areas. So I think it is strategically important to us. What we're doing is we're building a service that recognises that consumers are going to be moving around different devices in their lives, whether it's the TV or it's the computer or it's in their car increasingly, and that their expectation is that if they're interacting with a retailer like Tesco, who has platforms across retail, banking, food, non-food, that customers will expect to be able to move around those different platforms in a fairly seamless way. They won't expect to have to log on separately to each different service. They'll expect that experience to be much more joined up. So one of the things that we're doing is we're using the work that's going on in entertainment, which has similar challenges. So if you take the, I know we're going to hear later from the guys at Ultraviolet and DCE, the entertainment industry is facing these same challenges. Customers are going to expect to be able to get at the things that they own across all of these different devices and expect them to be joined up. Well, actually, that's a broad retailing priority as well, not just for entertainment. So our plan to use entertainment in a way to sort of drive that change that we need to make in our business to be more connected. And by the way, Connect is a working title, and it's meant to represent what we're trying to achieve here, which is a retail business that's more joined up than it is today, where customers are able to freely move around different parts of our offer and through different devices and still get that joined up experience. We think there's real power in that. And that they'll be able to act more on impulse. So if they're on their mobile phone and they've forgotten to buy sugar, they can very quickly access their account and drop that purchase into their basket because their basket is open in all these locations. So we think that's quite compelling. Going back to the point I made earlier, in delivering Tesco Connect, which is based on this principle of people buying licenses to consume as opposed to copies of things. So this old world of you buy a VHS and then you buy the same thing on DVD and then hopefully you'll buy it on Blu-ray and then on 3D and then on the next thing, that this idea that customers will move in a linear way from one format to the next. Obviously the timelines between the different formats is collapsing. It's no longer a reasonable proposition to customers to ask them to do that. So we are moving to this world of buy once, use anywhere, forever, which is where the sort of tenet of DCE comes from. What we're trying to do is recreate what customers already have in their lives today. So very often we end up, because technology is driving us there, we end up solving problems that people really don't have. So if I take my own experience, I've got DVD players in all sorts of locations around my home. We've got DVD player in a car. So when we buy a DVD, actually very rarely do we sit down as a family and watch that movie together. Sometimes we do, but more often than not, that movie will get moved around different people in the home and they'll consume it in different rooms. We'll take it in the car. So actually it's already pretty flexible. It works as a proposition to recreate that experience digitally, at the same time protecting ourselves from all of the issues of copyright protection and theft. And I think one of the watch-outs for our industry is that we've been so preoccupied with trying to protect ourselves from piracy and copyright theft, we've forgotten the legitimate customer and the experience that they're likely to expect to have. And the great thing about DC and Ultraviolet, which by the way, we're members of, I think we are. I need to renew my subscription, but we are members of that, and we're there because we believe that actually that is the only show in town in terms of any effort for the whole of the industry to come together to create an architecture for consumption that makes sense to customers and allows them to do what they largely do today when they're buying discs. So this really talks about what we think the customer experience is. And whilst we've got watch in there, watching movies in this instance is only a small part of what's really going on when people buy them. And I know there's a stat that I've heard a number of times that said 27% of all the movies bought in America, I'm not sure it was last year now, probably the year before, still in their shrink wrap. And in a way, it doesn't matter whether that's entirely correct, but what it does say is that people are buying things where the impulse to buy is greater than their propensity to consume. And so we need to be careful that we don't move to a world which is entirely dependent on demand, because actually demand is much lower than we think. So for example, we've spent a lot of time being preoccupied by things like fair use policies and actuaries working out how many times people will stream this and that. Actually, I think our greater challenge is that they'll stream anything at all. So it's just not, and I think subscription, a lot of people, I pay a subscription. I know we've got some folks from Sky here today, but I'll just talk about my own, I can't speak for the general population, but I have a movie subscription with Sky, and I pay it every month, and it's sort of become a sort of utility payment for me in my life. I don't actually watch a lot of movies, and I'm not sure I care to find out how many movies the rest of my family watch, because I'll probably find out it's not that many. but we happily pay our subscription every month for the convenience of maybe being able to watch a movie should we so wish. But I'm not watching hundreds of movies, and I'm not making that value judgment between what I pay in subscription and what I consume. So if we did move to a world of pure VOD, I do fear that there isn't enough D to go around. And actually what consumers are doing, they're buying, they're collecting, and part of what we do when we own things is that. And so creating experiences and environments in which people can collect, review, see what they've got, build a collection in a virtual sense. So I think our greatest challenge is to create the tangibility of ownership in this new world so that people feel that they really own that movie and that they get the same experience of buying it from a store and taking it home and putting it on a shelf. If we don't do that, and if we leap to subscription and VOD too early and we miss out the ownership piece, I think it will be a mistake. Whilst we recognise VOD and subscription, in fact we intend to bring those things to our service, we're deliberately not doing that out of the gate. What we are doing is repurposing the disc purchase and using that as a vehicle to take customers on a journey to this new experience. We think that's a more, it's a safer way to get people from one to the other. And again, as a retailer, I think the message is let's not forget the consumer in all of this wonderfully clever thing that we can do. Let's make sure we take the customers with us. And lastly, just to summarise, customer journey is important. People are finding it difficult to get their heads around a lot of this stuff. We're leaving too many people behind. We need to take the customers on a journey. There are huge challenges and opportunities, and I think, I'm not a film studio, so I'm not really betting the farm in saying what I'm saying, because as a retailer, we have a lot more to do than sell movies. So I get it's high stakes for a lot of the players in this market, but there are massive opportunities if we architect it correctly. And actually it requires, and the great thing about DCE, and I'm not here sort of an advert for DCE, but I believe in it because it is the only show in town where actually a broad base of companies have come together to try and create something bigger than all of them that we can then retail within. Next steps for market innovation, obviously Tesco, other retailers. Again, unusually for a big retailer, we've evangelised what DEC is trying to achieve to other retailers. And again, that tells you something about our mindset, which is if we can't do this on our own, we can't create this new model without other partners, without other retailers engaging and taking part. And it's a problem and something that the entire retail industry has to do together. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rob.